Hey everyone and welcome to another video, guys, and today we're going to be talking about how to correctly learn a new champion because yep, we're in the preseason now. A lot of you guys are adding new champions into your pool, or you're trying to expand the way stylistically you play your role, or maybe you're just trying to pick up a new role altogether. So I thought it'd be very fitting to do this video now so that you guys can utilize the preseason in the most effective, efficient way possible. And the way we're going to kick off this video is with an analogy, and this is one of my favorite analogies of all time because I think it perfectly describes the process of learning a new champion. All right, so let's actually direct our attention to the left hand side here. Believe it or not, this is a train and it's stationary at point A, at a train station. And this other train over here is stationary at the train station B. All right, so we've got point A and point B. Point A over here represents Champion Mastery 0. And point B over here represents Champion Mastery 75. And this Champion Mastery is a scale that goes all the way from 0 to 100. 100 being, you're absolutely flawless with the champion. You know all the little details, you know all the little intricacies in the matchups. You just know absolutely everything there is to know about that champion, and you're just a complete master. And to be honest with you, it's kind of unrealistic. I don't think anyone in the world is like at 100 champion mastery. Maybe they're very close, like a 97, a 98, or 99, but even that's a push. So my goal when picking up a new champion or when I'm working with a client is to get them from 0 to 75. Now, the reason it's 75 is that 75 means that you can play that champion to a pretty high level and you can still climb with it quite reliably, but you're not really learning the champion anymore from 75 to 100. You're just really refining a lot of small details. It takes a lot of time, and you have to do that by yourself. That's a very long-term process where you're trying to find all the intricacies, finding all the 1%ers, going through to the 80s, through the 90s, and that takes, a long period of time. So that's completely fine, and that's relatively straightforward, but it's a 0 to 75, which is the most painful. It is the hardest part of learning a new champion. So when we envision learning a new champion, we think we're going to go all the way from point A in this straight, very efficient path all the way to point B. And it's going to be smooth sailing. We're going to be cruising, scenic route. It's going to be fun. It's going to be an absolute blast. But if any of you have learnt a champion properly, we know that it is an incredibly grueling, tiresome, frustrating experience. And it looks more like this. We go this very inefficient route. We go up and down, zigzag, and we finally get there in the end, but it's terrible. It's shocking. It's inefficient. I wouldn't wish upon this process of learning a new champion to anyone. It is incredibly demoralizing. And this is the train track here, and what each of these bends represents are the loss streaks. These are the inevitable loss streaks that we are going to face. Because when you learn a new champion, you can't expect to go from 0 to Faker, or 0 to even a pro player or a one-trick level in a few weeks. This takes quite a long period of time, and you just don't know the matchups. You don't know the ranges, you don't know the power spikes, the power troughs, the mana cost, the feel of the champion. It takes time. Even if you're playing on a Smurf, you will go through these loss streaks at one point in time. Now, it's okay to have these loss streaks, but the danger of loss streaks is the loss of confidence. So yes, let's just say you go through your first loss streak over here, maybe you lose 8 in a row, 10 in a row, and maybe you just truck along, you're being very stoic, you're trying to be very powerful, brave, you're like, alright, screw it, I can overcome this, and maybe you get a few wins during this process here, but then you get to the second loss streak, you're trying to go through this, around this next bend here, and you're sick of it, it just breaks you, you lose all confidence, and your train actually derails. And what the derailing represents is that you have to go all the way back to square one because you've just lost the plot. In your mind, you're just like, screw this champion, I don't understand how it works, I hate it, I suck at it, I don't understand it, I'm just going to give up on it. Just go back to square one because you've got so many mental blocks by this point, by derailing and going through these loss streaks, you've got so many invisible narratives, mental blocks, toxic ways of viewing the champion, it's impossible for you to continue on. You've just derailed, you're done. And if you want to pick up this champion, you have to go back to square one and learn it right from the beginning. Now, the danger of this, if you go through this process of going through these big loss streaks and lose confidence during these little areas here, this can actually affect your overall level of play. Even if you're going to go back onto your main, say, screw it, I'm just going to go back to my main champion, play on my main champ, my main rank, you're probably going to lose. And you're going to lose that loss of confidence is actually going to affect your level of play. And then that's where you're going to have a real identity crisis. You're like, fuck me. I'm not even good at my main champion anymore. And this actually happened to me when I was going through the Azir, when I'm learning Azir. I had these massive loss streaks, and even when I went back onto my main account, I was shit in the bed. I actually forgot how to play the game because I went through so many of these loss streaks and just completely lost my confidence. Okay, so this entire video, the purpose of this video is that I want to make this journey as smooth as possible. It's not going to be a straight line, but I want to make it relatively smooth, relatively efficient, so we can get you to Champion Mastery 75 without shitting the bed, without derailing, without losing shitloads of confidence, and actually making you an overall better player. Alright, so if you have any questions about this analogy, let me know, but this is a fascinating, one of my favorite analogies, and I think it exemplifies very accurately the process of learning a new champion. So, what can we actually learn from this analogy, guys? So number one, learning a new champion is not easy by any means. It can be incredibly detrimental to your level of play as a solo queue player if not done carefully, literally making you a worse player. Right? And the second thing we can take away from it is that rushing this process and try to speed run it, right? Speed run learning a champion can be very dangerous because it leads to that toxic cycle of losing games, losing confidence, then playing worse as a result of losing that confidence, and then you just rinse repeat. You get stuck in this very, very toxic cycle. And remember, guys, once that train is off the rails, you can't come back. And actually, one other really interesting point about this analogy, guys, is let's just say you go through these loss streaks, and let's say you keep powering through, maybe you get to the third loss streak over here. If you try to, say you derail and you try to go back to square one and relearn the champion maybe a few months later or a few weeks later, you can actually severely damage this railroad, like maybe you screwed up the rails on it or you damaged the track, and when you try to go back over it, you can't pass it. You're just done. And what this represents is the mental blocks in these walls that you put up because you just created so much mental baggage there. It's impossible. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it's very difficult to overcome. And that's where you need to take a long, long period of time, or this healing process needs to take a very long period of time. That's actually happened to me before where I tried to learn, I believe, Zed a long time ago, or maybe another assassin. And I was like, screw it. I have to come back and learn it another time, like a few years later. But anyway, the third point here is that we need to find ways to smoothen and straighten this train track out as much as possible. And this is where our understanding of the learning process really needs to grow. So what I'm going to do is go ahead, share some of my tips, advice, steps that you guys can follow to make this process as easy and as smooth as possible. Now, note guys, not all of these things are going to be for you. So pick and choose. Some of them may click, some of them may not. So try them all out personally and see what works for you guys. So one of the things I realized when learning a wide variety of champions is that many of the same things overlap. They crop up again and again and again. And this is because there are only a few ways or a handful of ways that you can navigate each of the core underlying concepts, right? Let's just take wave management, for example. If I'm learning Fizz or Sylas or Echo, whatever, there's only 5 possible things I can do. I can only either hard shove, match it, keep it in the middle, slow build, get shoved in, play off bounce waves, or freeze. And if I'm really not sure, I will blindly pick one of them and see how it goes in that matchup. How did it feel? Did it create a favorable situation, an unfavorable situation? Did it feel awkward? Did it feel great? What did it allow me to do? And if I'm really unsure and I don't even know which one to pick and I have no idea what to do, I'll go watch a high elo VOD, whether it's a one trick or a pro player or just any high elo player, and see what they do and why they're actually doing this or choosing this option in that specific game. Is it because of the matchup? Is it because of the jungle matchup? Is it because of the level they're at, their power spike, their power trough? I actually get very specific. So have a go. And the reason I'm bringing it up like this, guys, is because every concept in the game is exactly the same. Doesn't matter if you're talking about roaming, game pace, side laning, whatever it is, there's only a few options, a handful of options of possible things you can do with your champion. Doesn't matter if I'm playing Sylas, Victor, Azir, Echo, Fizz, Orianna. It literally does not matter what champion I'm playing. And it's the exact same for using abilities with my champion. There's only a few differing ways to use abilities with your champion. You're either using your abilities preemptively because the ability is actually quite difficult to hit, like an Anivia Q, Zoe Bubble, Echo W, or actively because it's very easy to hit, like an Annie Q, like it's point and click, or it's a very fast projectile like a Victor E, or I'm using it reactively because my ability has some form of utility, durability, or gap closing element, whether it's Silas W, Fizzy, or even Yone W. Or the last one altogether, because if I hold my ability, it generates a lot of threat, so I actually don't want to use it at all, whether it's a TF Gold card or a Zerathi. I'm only doing one of these 4 situations, and again, if I'm really unsure, I'll try one of them, and then if I'm really unsure, again, I'll go to the VODs, go to the One Tricks, go to the pro plays, and see how they use their abilities. And one thing you'll realize after learning multiple champions, the process of identifying trends and the way that champion wants to navigate a game or laning phase becomes easier and easier and easier. And again, like I said before, this is the exact same process for roaming, game pace, side laning. And if you have any other questions, guys, about this sort of thing, again, feel free to let me know in the Discord or in the YouTube comments, and I'll try and get to as many of you as possible. So one of the most common questions I get is something like this, where they say, Curtis, I'm trying to pick up a champion and I'm quite overwhelmed right now. I just have no idea where to direct my attention. There are so many things I can focus on. Just help me. What do I do? So what I've done here is create a little pyramid of priorities. Down the bottom is where you should be directing your attention first. And as you get more and more champion mastery, you can begin to focus on more of these advanced concepts. So at the bottom here, we have things like item and rune theory. And some of you may be surprised. Why is item and rune theory at the bottom? The reason this is the case is that you need to understand, at least at a base level, why is my champion taking Comet? Why is my champion taking Electrocute? Or why is my champion building first item Ludens or first item Leandres? Like, how does that interact with my kit at the most basic level? Nothing really advanced, but yeah, very much the base level. This is where champion power spikes and power troughs, basic trading patterns, basic combos, and a very, very important one is ability identities, right? Now, remember in the last slide, I spoke about how you want to use your abilities or the different ways to use abilities. This is very important at the beginning. Now, if you're playing Orianna, you need to be thinking, okay, my Q has low mana cost and low cooldown. Therefore, I should likely be spamming it. You'd be surprised at how many people either spam abilities that have high mana cost and high cooldowns, or they don't spam abilities that have low mana cost and low cooldowns. Okay? You need to really be thinking about it at the most basic level. What is the identity of this ability? What is it trying to achieve? How do I need to use it? Do I need to hold it to generate threat? Do I need to use it preemptively? Do I need to use it actively? Or do I need to use it reactively as a form of utility durability? How do I need to use my abilities at the most fundamental level? Very, very important. Now, this next little row here, we have wave management, champion identity, role and compositions, win conditions, and just overall synergies and counters. This is when, you know, base level macro really comes into play. Then we have the third one here, game pace, roaming, advanced trading and micro, skirmishing, and basic mid to late game. Notice how I don't even think about basic mid lane and late game till the third row here. A lot of people, when they first started to pick up a champion, they're thinking, Curtis, how do I play the side lane? Do I need a split push? How do I team fight? They try to do this in the first 10, 20 games. No, this comes way later. The first 20, 30 games, in my opinion, should only be about the first 15 minutes of the game. Not until way later down the line you're thinking about mid and late game. Then eventually we get to differing styles of your champion. If you're playing Zed, maybe you can experiment with Conqueror Zed. Or maybe you're playing Victor, you can experiment with different setups and really understand advanced theory behind that. Team fighting and advanced mid-game really comes into play. And at the very peak, we have creativity. Creativity in every single aspect. How can I be more creative with trading, with my roaming, with my wave management, with my rolling compositions, with my itemization, with my runes, with my abilities? That's where just creativity across the board really comes into play. So hopefully, you know, this is not perfect, but I would say it's a pretty good representation of where you should be directing your attention when learning a new champion. So what we're going to do now, guys, is share with you my own learning process. And step number one, you need to get a second account that is significantly lower than your main and only play that champion on it. It's never made sense to me that people have this Smurf account that is much lower and they play their main champs on it. Stop doing that. Your second account, your Smurf account, is only for learning champions. Unless you're a challenger player and you've gotten 30, 40-minute queues and maybe you want to practice more efficiently so you have like a Diamond 1 account, I can kind of see that. But if you're a Platinum player or a Diamond 4 player with a Gold Smurf or a Plat 4 Smurf, and you're playing your main on it, what's the point, man? You're literally just wasting time and making everyone else's life incredibly miserable, okay? So have a second account that's much lower, and this makes the learning process much easier. And pick the champion even if you get countered, okay? This is very important because you need to understand why the counter is a counter in the first place, and you also need to get very good at at least minimizing some of these counters. Obviously, you can ban the biggest counter, like if you're learning Yone, I would like ban Akali, but I would still pick it into a Fizz, even though Fizz is good into Yone, just to learn it, figure it out, get creative. Like, it's all about champion mastery. And the second point here is that you need to break up your days. This is a very, very important point, by the way, guys. Do not mindlessly spam the same champion all day, every day. Set a block aside for it. This is where most people go wrong and actually mental boom as a result. What they do is they say, all right, I'm going to be picking up Zed. So for the next 80 games straight, no matter what happens, I'm going to be playing Zed. Now, some people can do this. I actually did this and I got quite lucky. I'll say I'm not representative of the average player. But for the average player, if you do that, going back to that train analogy, you're going to have these big, big loss streaks. Then you're going to lose a bunch of confidence. Then you're going to go back onto your main and you're going to be losing because of this loss of confidence. And then you're going to have like some form of an identity crisis. You're going to have no idea what level of play you're at. You're going to just boom and fall off the face of the planet, okay? You need to set aside a time in the day where you play back on your main account with your main champions to build up that confidence. Remind yourself that you know how to play the game. Then go back to your other account and play that champion. Don't just do it all at once. Split up the process. It's very, very important you follow that step. And the third one here, guys, after each game you play that champion, I straight away go and find a VOD of the exact same matchup on YouTube, ideally of a one trick or a very, very high elo player or a pro player, and I'll ask myself the following questions as I'm going through that VOD. So let's just say, hypothetically, I'm learning Fizz, right? And I just come out of a game where I played Fizz into Orianna. The first thing I'll do, even before I look at my own VOD, I'll go into YouTube, type in, say, Korean Challenger Fizz, or I look at Mango Fish, and Fizz versus Orianna, and watch him play that matchup. Then I'll go into my own VOD and I'll ask the following questions. How do these trading patterns differ to mine? And specifically, which abilities are used differently? I'll get very specific, tying back to that point before. Is he using his abilities reactively? Like, is he using them reactively? Is he holding them? How is he using his abilities and how is he trading? Are these trades heavy or soft? Is he trying to heavy trade, create chaos, or is he trying to minimize? And why is this the case? Is it because his jungler's in the area, or is he not in the area? What is he trying to achieve here? What amount of gold did they base on? What items did they buy, and how did the items affect the way they played the lane? How is he playing the waves and why? Tying back to those 5 options. Is he freezing, holding, playing off bounce waves, hard pushing? What is he actually doing? And the last one here, how has the jungle matchup affected this at all? It's very important to remember that if you're watching, say, a random VOD of Fizz versus Orianna, if the Fizz has a Rek'Sai jungle, it's going to get played very differently if that Fizz had a Shyvana jungle, okay? You got to really understand that the games based off elo, region, and the junglers in the game can be very different and actually alter the entire laning phase. That's also very important to understand. So guys, really try and follow this process, and this one is, both of these two specifically, if you don't do them, this process that you're going to go through is going to be incredibly difficult, all right? So what I wanted to do now is actually show you one of the things I did when I was picking up Zed. Because you may ask, Curtis, you have all this information from reviewing these VODs, how do you actually store it? So when I was doing my Zed guide, I played over 100 games of Zed in a very short period of time. What I did was I had a spreadsheet, and I'll have day 2, day 3, day 4, and then I would actually record it. This isn't all essential. I'm just sharing you the process I did here. I would have each of the games, and I'll have the KDA here. I would have the kill participation, I'll have the CS per minute, and I'll have the outcome. And then at the end of the day, I would actually average it and average my, and actually store my losses and wins here. Then I would take notes after every single game, and at the very end of the day, I would summarize my notes, okay? So let's actually go through some of these notes. Now remember, it's not about what I actually write down, it's what it means to you, right? You can write a whole essay if you want to, if that's very important to you, but for some people, they just want to put, 2 dot points or maybe a few words to remind them of a specific thought process. So for me, these are the sort of things I was saying on day 2. W cooldown was everything. Side lane awareness is crucial. If you can't kill lane, play to item spikes. Ignite awareness is crucial. Because I remember I had this big problem with going in just before my ignite was coming up. Like, I should just wait that 20 seconds for my ignite before going for that all in. Needs WA really fast. When Ring in, default response should be to run in the opposite direction. Like, all these little things I was just noting down, and then I would summarize them at the end of the day. And this is actually my day 3 notes. Every single day I got a little bit more detailed, a little bit more specific. And guys, remember, you can pause this and read over them if you really want, but these are just my notes when learning the champion. it doesn't really matter what they are specifically. It's about going through that process of reviewing, watching a high elo player play the exact same matchup, and try and come to your own conclusions, and you can compare them over time. And one of the things I realized, guys, was that, people ask me all the time, like, how do you use these notes? Like, what's the purpose of the notes? For me, the way I find notes to be the most useful is I see it as like a reminder of what I was thinking and feeling the previous practice session, right? I view it as kind of like a bookmark when reading a book. So let's just say I've just completed my day 3 of Learning Z. And I wake up in the morning and I'm ready for day 4 for Learning Z. If I just go in, it's really difficult for me to remember what I was thinking. All these little things that I'm thinking, like, how am I going to remember all this? It's impossible. So what I'll do as I'm in queue, or maybe just before I get into the game, I'll actually spend time reading over it. Ah, okay, interesting. This is the way I was thinking about that champion. Or that was the way I was thinking about that matchup. Oh, that reminds me, I need to be focusing on this again. And then it can really allow me to pick up where I left off. And like I said here, reading them while I'm in queue, glancing them over as I'm about to queue up, that sort of thing. And it's a great way, by the way, reflecting and capping off my practice blocks as well. Even at the end of the day, I like to just reflect on my notes, maybe before I go to bed or before I'm doing something else before dinner. I'll just read over them. Oh, interesting. That was actually a really interesting point. Never thought about that. And I'll just reflect over them. Kind of like, yeah, like I said, like a book and a bookmark. Now, I would not get too caught up, guys, with note taking, because for some people it's very crucial, for others not so much. So try it out, see if it works for you, and just experiment. Remember at the start of this video I said some of these things are going to work for you, some of them are not. It really just depends on what works for you. So a while ago in my DM, someone sent me this video from a fighting games content creator, and he had this video talking about a concept called mental stacks. I was like, what the hell is a mental stack? So I got into it and I was watching this video. It was a really good video. And essentially a mental stack is a term that is used to describe the amount of things that you are thinking about in a given moment. And it got me thinking, this is a really interesting concept to help color the process of learning a champion and champion mastery overall. So let's actually just go over an example here. So let's just say hypothetically, at any one point in time in League of Legends, the way the human brain works, let's just say hypothetically, you could only think about 4 possible things at the same time, okay? If you're learning a champion, and maybe you only have champion mastery 30 out of 100, you're going to be thinking about probably these 4 things in a skirmish. You're going to be looking at your character model to actually judge the amount of range, or your range assessment. You're going to be thinking about aiming your abilities and literally looking at the indicators. You're going to be looking to see if you can actually afford to use your combo by counting the mana. And you're going to be thinking about, how does my champion actually want to fight here? Do I want to play front to back? Do I want to flank? All these things. This is because you don't have champion mastery yet. You're going to be thinking about all these things. And the danger of this, and this is actually why, guys, by the way, I don't recommend focusing on skirmishing at the beginning, is because when you're learning a champion, you can't afford to think about all of the things that you should be thinking about. You should be thinking about the enemy key threats, thinking about the enemy summoner spells, thinking about the timer of the objective, waiting. You're literally thinking of X ability on the enemy team, waiting for it to come through so you can avoid it. Like, you're thinking about all these very useful things that can improve your skirmishing. You're no way going to be able to think about these things when you're learning a champion, because you just don't have that champion mastery, and all of these things over here are just muscle memory, and they're just not in your mental stack anymore. Now, in the video, it actually spoke about how one of the misconceptions from beginner players or lower level players or lower elo players comparatively to high elo players, they say things like this in fighting games. He's just got a bigger mental stack than me. That guy, that pro player, that pro fighting game player, his mental stack he can process like 8 things at the same time, whereas I can only process 4 things. And what this guy was saying is that it's actually not the case whatsoever. And what he says is that if you play a lot of the same champion or the same game over a long period of time, it's not that his stack is bigger than anyone else's. He just knows how to prioritize. Because in a given skirmish situation, there's probably, 200 or 150 things that you could possibly, okay, that's probably exaggerating, probably like 80 things you could probably think about. And with experience and playing a lot of the same game and seeing the same champions and really understanding your champion, you know exactly where to direct your champion. So you're prioritizing within this stack of 4. Out of all of the possible 80 things, you know which 4 things will give you the best possible results. Okay, and I really like that way of thinking. It got me thinking, that makes a lot of sense when learning a champion. That is why my skirmishing, my team fighting, all of these advanced things, I just can't do them effectively because I don't have the champion mastery to be able to prioritize. I haven't seen enough situations to be able to know what to think about in this situation. Okay, so, and this actually also makes sense in terms of how we actually rely less and less on reactions because we already know what is going to happen in a given situation. So if I'm playing Fizz heading into a skirmish, if I've played a similar skirmish, 250 times, I'm actually relying less on my reaction times to dodge an ability because I'm already preemptively thinking in my stack here. I'm already priming myself. Okay, that Graves is going to use Smokescreen any second now. So as soon as it comes out, I'm going to dodge it. That's very different to not thinking about Smokescreen at all and just having to randomly react, which also ties into this mental stack thing. So I thought it was a very interesting point. I may be reading a little bit too deep here. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, and if we've got some fighting game people in the comment section, if this makes sense to you. Now, just a few more interesting tips to round off the video, guys. This is actually of another fighting game story. There was actually a story of this pro player in fighting games, and I'm actually not sure how it works. Like, I'm pretty sure fighting game pro players, they play multiple games. Like, they play Super Smash Brothers and then Tekken and then Street Fighter. They play a lot of different games. And one of these pro players was trying to learn a new game. So let's just say there was 4 players, right? So we got player A, B, C, and D. Now, these 3 players really understood that when you're learning a champion or a role or a new game from scratch, you don't want to overwhelm yourself with all the little details. You don't want to go from, going from literally basics on how to control your character, thinking about like advanced combinations and advanced little tips and tricks. No, you got to take it one step at a time. You got to get the fundamentals down pat first, and then you slowly, through progressive, what's it called, progressive overload and gymming and things like that, you got to progressively add on more weight or progressively get more and more advanced. This player over here, this pro player, he's like, screw that. His personality, he must have been a very deep thinker type of person. He's like, no, I'm not going to skip over these details now. I need to know them at the beginning, and I'm just not going to do that. That's not the way I am. And what actually happened is that A, B, and C, they got really good at the game very quick, whereas this guy, he was capped. He actually wasn't good at the game, and it took him a very long time, and he actually never got to a high level because he probably did that the train track analogy where he derailed, lost a bunch of confidence, created a bunch of mental blocks, damaged the railroad, and was actually kind of stuck. So this is actually a problem I see with a lot of silver and gold players. They try to think about all these advanced things and play advanced champions at the beginning, thinking that it's going to save them time down the road. No, that's actually not the case at all. You learn faster and become a better player by doing the fundamentals first. Play the Annie, play the Diana, play the Echo and the simple champions at the beginning. Then you can get into the Aurelia and the Akali and shit later down the line when you're in Platinum. That actually allows you to progress a lot smoother as a player, and that train track have a much smoother process. The other tip I want to give you guys is that when you're learning a champion, especially when you're really kind of getting into Struggle Street, look at how you are losing rather than how you are winning. Because what you actually realize is that there's such a thing as a good and bad death, right? If you're dying because you think you can actually do something, like you thought, okay, the jungler is here, I know the jungler is here, but I actually think I can outplay them 2v1 if I just dodge that ability, or I account for these abilities, I think I can outdamage you and get my coup de grace and escape. And let's just say you do it, you miss execute, and you die. That's a pretty good death because you really thought about all the variables and you opted in for it willingly. But if you just randomly die, it's like this basic level 3 gank when you didn't ward at 2 minutes 40 and you just autopilot, that's a very bad death, and you're not really going to learn anything. So when you're going through this learning process, go to your deaths and ask yourself, is this a good death? Did I learn something from this? Or is this just as a result of autopiloting or just really having no clue, having no hypothesis? It's very important when you're dying with intention in a very weird way. Hopefully I'm making sense there. And the other one here, guys, if you're playing a very combo-intensive champion, maybe it's Fizz with the auto attack cancel or the Akali combos or Zed combos, I would recommend going into Practice Tool. This is quite rare because combos are quite easy in League of Legends comparatively to other games, so I wouldn't worry too much. But if your champion is one of these mechanically demanding ones, then this can save you a lot of painful experiences in the future. And the last little point here, guys, is reward yourself for small victories. It's very important to notice small improvements, even if it's as small as having a decent CS score for the first time. Or maybe you just did this perfect trade once in the entire game. And I love thinking about this because people think that the way they improve, they're going to go from, one game they're trash and the next game they're going to play the entire game perfectly. No. I've seen this too much in my Discord as well. Reward yourself. Go back into the replay and be like, you know what? I'm pretty sure I was Faker for 3 seconds there. Like, I played that flawlessly. And 2 weeks ago, I would not have been able to do that whatsoever. Or, holy shit, this is the first game on Yone where I've actually got 8 CS per minute. I'm actually proud of myself. You have to recognize the progression, because if you don't recognize that progression, that confidence, that loss of confidence, and you're going to beat yourself down over a long period of time, it's really not going to be healthy, right? So hopefully this helps, guys. A bit of an information overload here, but I thought it was very fitting to do this video given we're in the preseason. So let me know, guys, your thoughts. If you have any more questions or problems, let me know in the Discord or in the comment section below. Cheers, guys.